Hello, welcome back to Discover the Wonders. Today we are talking about the wonder of seasons. So we're going to talk about Joseph coming out of prison and also how his life is a little bit like the 4 different seasons of the year. So last week we learned about Joseph being in prison, and we learned a few different stories about people who were in prison and yet they wrote the most beautiful songs and books. And there's some amazing stories of the way God has helped people in prison. So today we're talking about Joseph coming out of prison and the wonder of the 4 different seasons. So Joseph was in prison, and then the 2 guys from the king that were in prison, they had dreams. Joseph was able to interpret their dreams, tell them what the special meaning was, and then they got out of prison. And one of them actually got put to death by the king, but the other guy went back to work for the king. And so Joseph said to him, "Would you please remember me to the king? Tell him that I am innocent and that I shouldn't be here in prison, and ask him to think about me and get me out." So Joseph had hoped that he might be going to get out of prison soon. But when that guy got out of prison, Joseph was out of sight and out of mind, and that guy forgot all about Joseph. But Joseph wasn't forgotten by God. It just wasn't the right time to get out yet. And Joseph spent another 2 years in prison, and he never knew when the time would come for him to get out. But one day, the king of Egypt had a dream. Well, actually, he had 2 dreams. And because Egyptians believed that every dream had a meaning, and so he sent for his wise men to come and tell him what the meaning of the dream was. But they couldn't help him. They had no clue what the dream meant. So the king was a bit frustrated because if all his wise men can't help him, who can? But then the wine steward, the one that had been in prison and Joseph had interpreted his dream, he suddenly remembered. And he said to the king, "Oh, king, I've forgotten. When I was in prison, I had a dream. And there was a man in prison who told me what my dream meant." And the king said, "Well, go and get him." And so Joseph was just having a normal day in prison, and suddenly he's told to come to the king, to get all washed up and shaved, and to come to the presence of the king. And the king says to him, "I've heard that you can interpret dreams." Now Joseph said, "Well, I can't, but God can. So if you tell me what the dream you had, then God may help me and know what your dream means." And so the king started telling Joseph his dreams. Now, he dreamed that out of the river came 7 fat cows and started eating grass. And then out of the river came 7 thin cows, and they ate up the fat cows. And so that was a very strange dream. What could that mean? And then he had a dream that there were 7 good, fat, healthy ears of corn, and then there were 7 thin, straggly ears of corn, and the thin ones ate up the healthy ones. The king said, "What on earth do these dreams mean?" Now God helped Joseph to see what the meaning was. And so Joseph said to the king, "I know what these dreams mean. God is warning you of what is going to come to pass. He's warning you what is going to happen so you can be prepared." And he said those 7 fat or healthy cows and the 7 healthy ears of corn, they mean 7 good years, because both the dreams had the same meaning. And so God was really kind of emphasizing what was going to happen by giving him 2 dreams. So he said that the 7 healthy cows and the 7 healthy ears of corn, they mean we're going to have 7 good years where there's going to be plenty of food. All the crops are going to grow really well. There's just going to be, way too much. But after that, it's going to come 7 bad years. 7 years of there not being much rain and the crops not growing. And so there will be 7 years of famine. And the king thought, oh no, that's terrible. It's nice to have 7 good years, but in the 7 bad years, people will die, people will starve. But that wasn't all Joseph had to say. Joseph also had a solution to what was going to happen. He said, you need to get a wise man who you can put in charge of storing up food while there is plenty. So while there are 7 good years, organize someone to, organize for a big barns and big sheds to be built everywhere and start saving all the extra food. And then when the 7 bad years come, there'll be plenty of food all stored up and you'll be able to sell it. So then people won't have to starve. And the king listened to that, and that was a good idea. And then he said to Joseph, you are the man. You are the wise man. I want you to be that man and to be in charge of storing up the grain. So Joseph is first of all, he's a slave when he was sold by his brothers. And then he gets thrown in prison when he was falsely accused. And now he's suddenly been taken out of prison and he's been made the prime minister of Egypt, the second in charge from the king. Now that's pretty incredible. That's a sudden, amazing change. Now he has a huge amount of responsibility. Is he ready for it? Yes, he is, because when he was a slave, he worked hard, he was faithful, he had integrity, he did his job well. And then even in prison, he did his job well there too. He was faithful and reliable and he could be trusted. So now he's had those times, and at those times have prepared him for the job that has now been given him to do. And remember, in prison, he also got to know those 2 guys who'd worked in the palace. So he would have learned about the palace and about the king then as well. So that would have helped prepare him. So now what's he going to do? Now he's going to do the same thing that he did in prison and as a slave. He's going to be faithful. He's going to work hard. He's going to do his best. And he's going to have integrity and do what's right. And he's still going to trust and obey God, just like he did in the other places as well. So I think that Joseph's life so far has been like the 4 seasons. So if you think of summer was a little bit like his childhood when he grew up. Summer is kind of a nice time, a happy time, sunshine time. But every season does have its hard things as well. And so even Joseph's childhood was hard, and that his mother died and his brothers hated him. But then he had kind of an autumn time in his life when his brothers sold him and he had to be a slave. So in autumn, things change. There are the beautiful colors of the trees, but then there's like the loss of all the leaves coming off the trees. And then he had like his winter time when he was in prison. And winter, the days are more dark and long and can be a bit more gloomy and cold. And that was kind of a bit like what it was like for him when he was in prison. But then after winter, after the long days of winter, you have spring when the flowers start to grow and the grass grows and it's a busy time. And that's what Joseph's that's what his life was like now. He was out of prison. Now he had a very busy life with lots of responsibility, but it was such a kind of good and happy time now that he was out of prison. So his life is a little bit like the 4 different seasons, and our life can have different seasons too. There's a Bible verse that says, to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. And then it goes on to have this whole list of things. There's a time for this and a time for that, a time to laugh and a time to cry. So, and then there's a verse that says he makes all things beautiful in his time. So I'm going to sing you a song called In His Time, and it's kind of based on these verses out of the Bible. It's a very beautiful song. In his time, in his time, he show me every day as you're teaching me your way, that you do just what you say in your time, in your time, in your time. You make all things beautiful in your time. Lord, my life to you I bring, with its winter and its spring. May I fathom everything in your time. There's a time, there's a time, both for sowing and for reaping. There's a time, time for losing, time for gain, time for joy and time for pain. Every purpose under heaven has a time. There are times, there are days, weeks and months we cannot understand God's ways. If for years we fail to scan what is His eternal plan, we'll remember that He can all the time. In His time, in His time, He makes all things beautiful in His time. Lord, my life to you I bring. May each song I have to sing be to you a lovely thing in your time. So let's talk now a little bit about the wonder of seasons. Now, we could talk all day about the wonder of seasons because there are so many different things, and I'm sure there's so many different stories, but we're just going to talk a little bit about different things in each season. So we'll start off with summer. So summer, when I think of summer, I think of the beach and of ice cream and sunshine and not so much rain. It's usually more dry, but of course in every country it's different, and not every country has kind of 4 distinct seasons. But there is a wonder over in Morocco that happens in summer. So if you're traveling through Morocco, you might see a tree full of goats. So in Morocco, there is an argan tree, and it has argan nuts that grow on it. And during the summertime, goats climb up these trees and they feed on these argan nuts. But I mean, how strange is that to see goats climbing trees? I'd never even heard of that before. And they have really good balance, they don't, all fall out. So that is a wonder in Morocco. And so argan nuts are made into argan oil, which is like a really expensive oil, but the goats help with the process. So they eat the fruit, then they kind of digest it, and then it comes out, and then the people use that and start, working with it and making the argan oil. And so when I think of summer, I think of beaches as well, and there are some neat beaches or different places at beaches. So in a Victoria Beach in Australia, you're just walking along the beach, and then you see this tower on this kind of next to the cliff, and it looks like a tower out of an old castle, like a medieval style tower, just right there on the beach. And it was built in 1926. And up the top of the cliff, there was a senator who lived there, William Edward Brown from California. And so this tower was built like with a staircase. And so this senator could get down to the beach through this tower. So that's why that tower was built, but it looks quite neat. It's just like there's a little bit of a castle right there on the beach. And there's also another interesting place in Florida. It's an underwater lodge. So it's like a lodge that you can stay in, but it is under the water and you have to dive down just to get inside. So I thought that's quite neat. I don't think I'd want to stay there. I'd be afraid it would break and all the water would come in. But that is a wonder as well, to have an underwater lodge. And there are other places like that around the world too, where you can stay under the water and I guess you get quite a neat view. But there's also a story of something that happened in summer once, and that's a really amazing story. So there were some people in America who lived in the city. The man was a businessman, but his business was not going well at all, so he wanted a change. So they went west. They brought like a little farm. They built a cabin, and they lived there, and they started to grow things, like to farm crops. But they had problems there too. And one time during the summer, the man got very sick. And so they called the doctor, and the doctor had bad news. He said the only way, he said this to the wife, the only way your husband might survive is for him to get ice, I guess to cool his temperature down. Now, that would be no problem today because we have freezers. But if you think back to before they had freezers, how are you going to get ice in the middle of hot summer? So she called all her friends and neighbors, and they came to pray for this man. And so this lady, she started praying to God, and she specifically asked God to send ice. Now, those neighbors looked at her and looked at each other, and they kind of whispered to each other, and they said, there's no way we can get ice in summer. Now, the lady heard them whispering, but she believed that God could send ice. Now, God does not always do what we ask him to do. There are many people who have prayed for things and God has said no because God had different, better plans. But this lady, she knew that with God, all things are possible. So she prayed, and the neighbors just looked at her and thought, well, whatever, that's impossible. But that afternoon, the sky grew dark. It started to rain. There was thunder and lightning. And then it started to hail. And the hailstones were so big, they were like eggs. And that lady saw that, and she went and got a bucket and filled it up with these hailstones. And she was able to use them for her husband, and his life was saved. So that was a wonder God did in summer. He answered her prayer for ice by sending a hailstorm. And it seemed impossible to get ice in summer, but with God, all things are possible. And when we have a problem, we can pray to God even when it seems impossible. We don't know what God will do, but we know that with God, all things are possible, and that he does hear our prayers and that he will do what's best. And then there is autumn, the wonder of autumn. Autumn is such a beautiful time when all the leaves are beautiful colors, and then they all start to fall off. And then the trees are more bare. But one thing I think about with autumn is acorns. And in New Zealand, we don't have squirrels, but in other countries, there are a lot of squirrels. And I've been studying squirrels, and they're very fascinating. And there's a lot of interesting things about them. And so squirrels, they save up acorns for the winter, and so they hide them, and they actually plant thousands of new trees every year because they don't remember where all the acorns are that they hid. They do have a good memory, and they do remember where a lot of them are, but they don't remember all of them, and so they are constantly planting new trees, which is quite neat. But, it reminds me of, there's a verse in the Bible that says, thy word have I hidden in my heart that I might not sin against thee. So it is a verse that talks about hiding God's word in our heart. So the squirrels hide food. They hide acorns, so later on they have food to eat. And when we get to know God's word, the Bible, when we learn it, when we learn to love it and memorize it, then it's like we're storing up food, and it will help us later on. So squirrels hide acorns, they store up for the winter, and in the process they plant thousands of new trees every year. Ground squirrels have cheek pouches for carrying food, so that's pretty neat. That's like they got pockets inside their cheeks so they can fill up with food, because how else are they going to carry so many acorns? Squirrels can rotate their ankles 180 degrees to climb down trees head first. Also, squirrels communicate using tail signals and vocalizations. They've also been known to adopt other squirrels' abandoned babies. And sometimes squirrels, they're quite smart, they pretend to bury nuts to deceive potential thieves. So sometimes if they think another squirrel's going to find their food, they pretend to bury nuts just to try to trick them. So that's pretty smart. Squirrels also sweat through their feet, so they can leave like little wet footprints because they sweat through their feet. Also, squirrels are very spotless animals, and they clean themselves regularly. They can also jump up to 20 times their body length. And another interesting fact is that a squirrel's brain grows in size during autumn. And the largest kind of squirrel can be over 3 feet long. And then there's also like flying squirrels as well, which some of them are very big, and they can just like glide from tree to tree, which is quite amazing. And some ground squirrels hibernate for 9 months a year. So that is one of the wonders of autumn, the wonder of squirrels that God created. But after autumn, we have winter, which not everybody likes winter, but I don't mind it as long as I'm inside and the fire's going and it's nice and warm. But one wonder of winter is the wonder of snow. So a long time ago, there was a guy called William Bentley. And when he was a child and when he was a teenager, he was very fascinated by snow. And when he was 15 years old, he got the gift of a microscope. And so he started to look at snowflakes under the microscope. And this is what he said. He said, under the microscope, I found that snowflakes were miracles of beauty. And it seemed a shame that this beauty should not be seen and appreciated by others. Every crystal was a masterpiece of design, and no one design was ever repeated. When a snowflake melted, that design was forever lost. Just that much beauty was gone without leaving any record behind. So this guy, he took, because he learned to take photos of these snowflakes so other people could see them, and he took at least 5,000 photos of different snowflakes. And he said that no two snowflakes are alike. They're all unique. Now that's kind of mind-boggling when you think of how many snowflakes there are. Like if you see a mountain covered in snow, how many snowflakes would there be? And yet they're all so beautiful, and none of them are exactly the same. They're all unique. And that is so much like people. That is like you and me. There are so many people in the world, but every person is a little bit different. Every person is unique. That's because they were created by God, and we are all unique and special, and God has a special purpose for our life. And William Bentley said how when a snowflake melted, that design was forever gone. And that is like people too. Like once a person has died, there is no person going to be exactly the same again. So it shows us the wonder of snowflakes, the wonder of God's creation, and it also shows us the wonder of people, because every person is a creation by God, and they're like a snowflake, and that they're all beautiful and they're all different. They're all unique. I'm just going to sing a little song called 'tis winter now. 'Tis winter now, the fallen snow has left the heavens so coldly clear. Through leafless boughs the sharp winds blow, and all the earth lies dead and drear. And yet God's love is not withdrawn, His life within the keen air breathes, His beauty paints the crimson dawn, and clothes each branch with glittering wreaths. And though abroad the sharp winds blow, and skies are chill, and frosts are keen, home closer draws her circle now, and warmer glows her light within. Oh God, you give the winter's cold, as well as summer's joyous rays. You warmly in your love enfold, and keep us through life's wintry days. And then after winter, you have the beautiful time of spring when the weather starts to get warmer. It's a lot of rain, and so the rain and the sunshine, they make the grass and the weeds and the flowers start to really grow. And there's the beauty of the daffodils and the bulbs that come up. And I think it's really neat. I think it's really amazing how seeds or bulbs, they start off so little and they're kind of ugly. You bury them in the ground, and then sometime later there's this beautiful plant with beautiful flowers on it. And that's a miracle that only God can do, to take something so ugly and make it into something so beautiful. And that's what God can do with the things in our lives that are not so nice. God can take not nice things that happen to us, and when we trust in Him and when we love Him, then He can make that into something beautiful, just like what He did in Joseph's life. He took all the hard things and He made something beautiful. He made him into a man of real character, and now God uses him and the things he's been through to feed the whole of Egypt and even the world, because later on people from other countries would come to get food in Egypt. And there's also I was walking in the rain the other day, and so I had an umbrella, and I was thinking how, the Bible's a little bit like an umbrella. You can have an umbrella, you can have a really nice umbrella, and yet if you don't open it up and use it, it doesn't do you any good. But when you do open it up and use it, it protects you from the rain. And the Bible's a bit like that. We may have a Bible sitting in our house somewhere, but unless we open it up and read it and we apply it to our lives and trust in it, it doesn't really do us any good. But when we do get our Bibles and we do open them up and read them and we use them, we apply them to our lives, it can make such a difference to our lives. And then in spring, you also have all the new life, all the animals that are born, and you have new beginnings. Spring is a time of new life and new beginnings. So that is a little bit of the wonder of seasons. So we have different seasons in our life, and just like Joseph, we need to be faithful and reliable and trustworthy in every season of life, and we need to trust God that He's working all things together for our good, And then God will do great things in our lives, just like he did in Joseph's.